So obviously Google has a lot of our data in terms of what we search, what we buy, and overall digital consumer behavior. So years ago, what they did was they released a finding that was called the 7-11-4 rule. And this basically suggested something that I feel like podcasters can take advantage of. They already are and have been the smart ones. But if you're not yet, then this is definitely something I would consider in your strategy. Obviously, you have to take the 7-11-4 strategy with a grain of salt because it has such a wide umbrella of data. So it's not considering whether your product is $2 or $200 or $200,000, right? But generally what we can pull from this, I think, is stuff that are tried and true principles we should maybe try to emulate anyways. So let's break it down. The 7 in the 7-11-4 rule represents 7 hours. So this is basically the amount of time that a consumer spends engaging with your brand. It could be in the form of TikTok videos. It could be in the form of YouTube videos, podcasts, or whatever it is. 7 hours, if you think about it, is actually a decent amount of time, right? So if you added that up 30 seconds at a time versus maybe with something like a podcast, you could knock that out in 7 episodes, 14 episodes. Same thing when it comes to YouTube. It's easier probably to increase the watch time for each of these viewers. So I'm sure it's obvious to you how podcasting can play a role with helping you kind of reach that 7-hour target pretty quickly. Versus if you try to do the exact same thing in the form of 5-second, 10-second reels on Instagram, you're going to need a lot of those to add up to the 7-hour rule. What's cool is that it's pretty easy for you to hit 7 hours with obviously just podcasting or just YouTube. But when you combine some of the natural things you might do, like promote your podcast with clips, you are going to be adding up watch time with that alone. So a client of mine recently, we had a 2-minute clip of his that kind of went viral for his account. And I remember seeing the watch time was added up to like 15 hours on just that reel. So a 2-minute clip translating to 15 hours of watch time within like a day or two is pretty crazy, right? And if you have 10 different clips that are all doing something similar, that can add up as well. So you don't want to underestimate the power of shorter clips and videos and posts that are basically helping you reach that 7-hour total. So the 11 in 7-11-4 stands for 11 touch points. Now, touch points are important because this can be achieved in a number of ways, but you want to think about, let's say, Instagram. Okay, an Instagram post that's being served on your feed is 1 touch point. Then maybe an email that was an automated follow-up that you sent out, that's another touch point. Now, if you wait on one platform, something like Instagram, for somebody to consume 11 touch points with you, in my experience, I've found that these 11 touch points sometimes in some industries can stretch out to be as long as 6 months, 2 years before somebody makes a purchase. But as you can see, you can shorten the timeline to the purchase behavior that you want by making sure that those 11 touch points are super, super easy to achieve. So it's not just relying on Instagram, putting your post up in front of them for them to get that. It is taking a number of different approaches to help get that touch point. So we've gone through 7 hours, 11 touch points. The last 4 in 7-11-4 represents 4 locations. The reason this is important is because this means that you need a couple different platforms, right? So let's say you're on Instagram and you might have seen my story. Then it assumes that, okay, maybe that person might also be on your email list and they're getting your emails, right? And then maybe it also assumes that, okay, this person has seen you on YouTube. Okay, so they've consumed your stuff on 3 different platforms now. If you think about how hard this is traditionally to do, it was very difficult, right? If you were thinking of all of this stuff from scratch and you're like, how do I play the game on TikTok? How do I play the game on podcasts? How do I play the game on X? How do I play the game on LinkedIn? It becomes very, very complicated pretty quickly, especially if you don't have a team that's helping you out with any of this. So this is where podcasting can really save the day, because just by making the podcast, you're automatically on 2 different platforms. Okay. You're on YouTube if you're doing video, and you are on Spotify and Apple, all the audio platforms from doing the audio. And then for most people, you're guaranteeing your presence on a 3rd location because you probably are going to share clips in some format. You're going to share it wherever you and your audience is most active, which for some people might be a LinkedIn, others it might be an Instagram, and for some other people it might be TikTok. So whatever it is, you are going to use the concept of being able to extract clips and publish them on one of these social channels for distribution. You can probably see how there's a seamless funnel starting with the main piece of content that distills its way all the way down to clips. And now let's say to bring in your 4th location, what you can do is send out an email. So the email could be the fact that, hey, the new episode is out or my new YouTube video is out. And that's all. I've seen plenty of creators do that, and it works very well because it's a nice reminder to guarantee that you're getting clicks back to that main piece of content. So it could be as simple and as easy as that. Or you could take it a step further and basically use that main piece of content from the podcast episode as your jumping off point for something you want to expand on, something you want to double click on, something that is using the same principles that you do when you're cutting down long form and short form clips, which is, okay, is this moment worth turning into an email? Does a good subject line come out of some of the content I might be discussing, right? But once you shore up some of those things, it can feel like a totally new piece of content, a new email, even though it was derived from something that you made, which already exists. And if, let's say, that same person consumes your stuff on all 4 different locations, they're not like, oh, I already heard the episode here, right? Most people, their reaction to that kind of thing is like, oh, this was such a great episode. They feel kind of excited that they're seeing the clip somewhere and they already consumed it, right? So regardless of where the consumer finds you first, whether it's in an Instagram clip or it was directly on YouTube, you're going to notice that if you've created volume of content on each of the 4 different locations, people will naturally go down the funnel without you asking them to. So when people find me on Instagram, they naturally might stalk me and go find my YouTube. And vice versa, people who find my YouTube might stalk me and go to my Instagram. So no matter where somebody starts in your funnel, you want to at least give them the opportunity to get exposed to those 4 different locations. And the great news is that you can do this before you even have a product or service. You can treat your show itself as the product. But it's not unreasonable for you to, within a few months, have 7 hours of content that somebody could actually binge and 11 different touch points that they might be able to get from you, along with 4 different locations where they could get the messaging in the format they want, in the way that supports their learning. So I hope you can see how podcasting knocks out all 3 of these numbers for you if you do it strategically. You can easily hit the 7 hours of content, 11 different touch points, and 4 different locations that you want your consumer to engage with you on. And as I mentioned before, even if these numbers are not fully accurate, it might be more in your market or shorter in your market. That typically depends on pricing, the product and service that you might actually be selling. But the 7-11-4 rule at least serves as a compass, which comes from a trusted source, right? Google is obviously so large of a company that it's kind of nice that they've taken the time to compress this data into these 3 findings for everyday people that are using their platform. So people that are using YouTube or Google and SEO, these are things that would help them as well. But I think it goes beyond that, and it can be used in your strategy no matter what type of content that you're starting from, even if it's not podcasting. But especially if it is podcasting, I think you are at an advantage with being able to satisfy these 3 rules. So check out some of the free and paid tools that I have in the description below. I think you might find them useful, but drop a comment. I would love to hear from you if this was helpful for you. And I appreciate your time and you hanging out, and I will see you on the next one.